Massachusetts, and I'm extremely excited to see everyone at this forum on community and labor taking on Amazon. I'm going to start us off by asking participants to list in the chat what town or community you're from, so we get a sense of where everyone is located. So I'm seeing Somerville, elsewhere, Andover, Chicopee, Jamaica Plain, Fall River. Nice. So we've got people around the state, which is exactly what we would want. And now I'm going to ask you a question about how large in square feet do you think the largest planned Amazon facility will be in Massachusetts? Put it in the chat. Not seeing any estimates. Let's see. We're seeing 3 million square feet from Jimmy Donovan, 50,000 square feet, 80,000, 50,000, 2 million, 1 million. No clue, but big. Jimmy Donovan's right. It's 3 million square feet. I can't even imagine that's as large as a small town. So now, put in the chat whether you would like to live next to an Amazon facility in your town or in your community. A lot of no's. Not seeing any yeses. Some more estimates. Environmental pollution. Somebody already does. Judith Conrad lives near an Amazon facility. So another question, how many of you have shopped at Amazon within the last month? I have. I ran out of time. COVID was still in quarantine form. Yeah. Trying to organize us against Amazon is super complicated. To try to control Amazon's business practices, the working conditions in Amazon, its environmental impact. We do have to unite together, community and labor organizations, to make Amazon responsive to the human beings it's supposed to serve. I'm going to pass the meeting on to Chris Spears, who's going to give our invocation, and then Rand Wilson will be introducing himself and the panelists. Welcome.
Welcome. We recognize that we meet this evening on lands taken from Indigenous people. We recognize that we live within the American capitalist system founded on slavery, a system that established a legacy of violence and selfish acquisition that includes mass shootings, racism, sexism, homophobia, support of oppressive foreign governments, and economic inequality. The corporations that become part of our community should be good business citizens. We stand with the working class and their rights to dignity, a living wage, and competitive benefits. Through forums like this one, we endeavor to educate the public on these complex issues by finding constructive solutions regarding a new way forward.
All right. Thank you for that, Chris. And I think it's a perfect lead into this forum on taking on Amazon. My name is Rand Wilson. I'm a union organizer, recently with SEIU Local 888, but with about 40 years experience organizing. And I am the host or moderator for tonight's forum, with the objective of bringing together some people in Massachusetts and elsewhere who have been taking on Amazon. And we, instead of having a theoretical conversation about it, I wanted to get a couple of union organizers who have been doing some work in the building trades and with Amazon workers. And we wanted to have an Amazon employee. And then we wanted to bring together some experts who've done some research about the impacts of Amazon on Massachusetts and around the country. We're going to try to keep tonight's program tight, under an hour. We'll end at 8 o'clock sharp. But because we're labor oriented here tonight, we would be remiss if we did not spend a minute acknowledging the work of the Massachusetts Nurses Association nurses at St. Vincent's Hospital, who have been on strike now for more months than it's just unimaginable. They're fighting for all of us. And with no further ado, I want to ask Marie Ritacchio just to fill us in on what's going on with the nurses. Marie?
Thank you so much, Rand. Yes, my name is Marie Ritacchio, and I'm from Auburn, Massachusetts. I work at St. Vincent Hospital in Worcester. I've been a nurse there actually in my 39th year, and I'm also the vice president of the Massachusetts Nurses Association. So it's really my distinct honor to be here to share with you for a few moments what the 800 plus nurses of St. Vincent Hospital have experienced in the past 2 years, really. So we work for St. Vincent Hospital, but we're owned by Tenet Healthcare Corporation, which is a for-profit corporation based out of Dallas, Texas. They are a multinational company. They are worth billions of dollars, and sadly, they are our employer. Just a little bit of history. We first organized with Massachusetts Nurses Association back in 1999. We began our relationship with them, and it took us a little over 2 years to achieve our first contract with Tenet Healthcare. They were our employer then also. And that contract was achieved only through a 49-day strike. It was an open-ended strike, a very successful strike, but it took us 49 days to get them to agree to a contract that essentially eliminated mandatory overtime as a means to staff our institution. This was very important to nurses, and it was very important to patients, because no patient wants to have a nurse in their 13th hour. And we won some extremely good language. We called it our sick and tired language. So we built on that foundation. We were owned by Vanguard for a period of time. So probably until Tenet's return about 5 or 6 years ago, we had relatively good labor relations with our employer. We were never, I would not call it perfection. It was not, but it was at least a working relationship at the table, because there was some respect that was given from both sides. But about 6 years ago, when Tenet came back, we noticed slowly that there was a deterioration in the labor relationship. And we have been fighting this fight for over 2 years now, prior to the pandemic. We have been in negotiations, I would say, for probably about 17 months. Prior to the pandemic, nurses attended a session with management to outline in a detailed way the unsafe conditions that existed in the building before the pandemic. Our CEO, Carolyn Jackson, has been with us less than 2 years, but she has really made an indelible mark on this institution. She made it very clear that she did not want to recognize the M&A, did not want to recognize the fact that the nurses in the building were a unified front and were a unionized body of nurses. We have been at the table roughly 34 times with them. The last time we met, I believe, was on March 5th. Our only reason for being out on strike is over one issue and one issue only, and that is the unsafe patient care conditions that exist in that building. We work in a city with two other hospitals, UMass Memorial Healthcare, which owns Memorial Hospital, and University Hospital. And at those hospitals, on the med-surg floors, typically nurses have no more than 4 patients at a time. And we have told them time and time again, that is the standard that we expect. There's a lot of research that goes into that number. And time again over the years, they have proven through very in-depth research that if you have more than 4 patients in an assignment, there's a very high rate of risk for readmission to the hospital, for bed sores, pneumonia, lack of appropriate care and teaching. And we know that the safest number is no more than 4. They presented us with a proposal that was very comprehensive. We took about 12 hours, and the last time we were at the table, we gave them a very comprehensive response. It is essentially their, the ball is in their court, but they are saying that they are not willing to go to that ratio of 4-to-1. So here we are out on the streets. We have tremendous support from our community, tremendous support from the nurses in the building. We have over 740 out of about 860 nurses out with us. Recently, we found out that we qualified for unemployment insurance. And at the end of May, the hospital will be mailing out COBRA forms, and we know that we will qualify for 100% subsidy of our COBRA benefits for health insurance. So here we are at day 77. Tomorrow will mark the beginning of our 12th week. The resolve of the nurses is just as strong as it was, if not stronger than it was on day 1. The nurses at St. Vincent Hospital want to be in that building more than anything. But until the hospital comes to the table and deals with the issue of staffing, there are some other issues that need to be dealt with that really do make it probably a less safe condition if we were to take the last offer that they made on the table. So we are as resolved as ever. We're dealing with a corporation that in the first 3 quarters of 2020 generated more than $12 billion in revenue. And I understand what the plight is of the Amazon workers. Obviously organizing is the way to go. You're dealing with a huge beast of a corporation. We have much in common. I've heard the stories of workers on the line not even being able to leave the line for a bathroom break and having to use a receptacle to urinate in. That is so disrespectful. Nurses know your plight. Typically, we just hold it in for the whole shift, which is either 8 or 12 hours. And I'm sure that you've missed many meal breaks, as have we. So I have much solidarity for your plight. I'm very interested to hear what's going on as you continue to try and organize these workers. It's a tremendous undertaking. And I look forward to any questions, and very looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Marie.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marie. And, one day longer, one day stronger. I know that by sticking together, you'll be victorious. And I just want you to know that all of us in the labor movement, in our revolution, and in Progressive Mass, all the sponsoring groups for tonight's program are behind you, and, do everything we can to support you in this incredible struggle in Worcester. It's gone on far too long, but, whatever it takes. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So can we just put the agenda back up on the screen, Henry? There we are. So, tonight we're going to hear from Allison Felix, from Greg Leroy. We'll have an update from Hal Ginsberg, and then James Donovan from Teamsters Local 25, and Chris Brennan from the Painters District Council. And then we'll wrap up with a voice of the Amazon workers, Jonathan Bailey, who's with an amazing group called Amazonians United. So just to kick things off, Allison Felix is with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. She's the author, and she's a transportation planner, but she's the author of a recent report on warehouses in Massachusetts, and of course, much of that focused on Amazon. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Allison. Sum up your report and your findings on Amazon in Massachusetts. Allison?
Great. Thank you very much, Rand. My name is Allison Felix, and I am a senior transportation planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, or MAPC. MAPC is the regional planning agency serving the people who live and work in the 101 cities and towns of metropolitan Boston. MAPC's mission is to promote smart growth and regional collaboration. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'll keep going, but if you could go into the slide presentation, that would be great. About 3 months ago, MAPC, great, thank you. And then the next slide, perfect. About 3 months ago, MAPC released a report to better understand how e-commerce affects our communities, and also to serve as the resource for municipalities and policymakers. This report concentrates on transportation and land use impacts, but it also identifies topics for future research. The list on the left shows the chapters of our report. Next slide. So e-commerce is currently a $600 billion industry in the United States, and it is centered on a model of same-day delivery, and e-commerce has reshaped how supply chains work. As you can see in the top figure, in the past, goods moved first from the factory to the distributor and then to the store where consumers made purchases. However, due to e-commerce, the supply chain has evolved into an expanded logistics model that moves goods across a very complex network of interconnected facilities. Next slide. The Census Bureau estimates that e-commerce represents almost 14% of total retail sales. While most retail sales are still made in traditional in-person settings, e-commerce has more than doubled in the last 5 years. E-commerce is having a significant impact on logistics, as seen in the doubling of the number of packages delivered by the U.S. Postal Service over the last decade in the bar chart on the right. Next slide. The impacts of e-commerce can also be seen in shifts in employment. Non-store retail employment in Massachusetts, which includes online retail occupations, grew 64% from 2010 to 2019, and employment in transportation and warehousing increased 30%. During the same period, traditional retail employment numbers in the state remained relatively flat. Next slide. The study revealed that e-commerce impacts transportation networks regionally with increased traffic and locally with multiple daily deliveries at workplaces and residences, where we learn that vehicles compete for the use of the curb. Next slide. And the pressure to maintain dependable and ever quicker delivery times has resulted in e-commerce companies adding warehouse and distribution centers closer to consumers as part of their regional networks. And this is a significant industry trend. Next slide, please. And then the next slide. So now I'll turn to the impact of e-commerce on retail infrastructure. Many malls and other traditional retail locations have been contending with sizable and steady closures, vacancies, and declining profits over the past several years. It's estimated that approximately 25% of all malls nationwide will close over the next 5 years. Despite these significant and steady declines, retail sales are not declining. Instead, the retail landscape is transitioning from malls and physical retail locations to warehouse and distribution centers. So, depending on where e-commerce facilities locate and traditional malls and stores close, municipalities could face various land use and fiscal challenges. Next slide. And as an example, I'll take a closer look at Amazon, which is one of the largest tenants in the greater Boston industrial market and has plans for continued expansion. At the beginning of this year, there were 20 Amazon facilities operating and 14 facilities in the pipeline in Massachusetts. While the oldest of these facilities opened in 2014, 10 became operational last year. If all planned facilities become operational, the total square footage could reach over 12 million square feet in the state. And this is just Amazon. Next slide. MAPC also developed an inventory of warehouse and distribution centers in eastern Massachusetts as part of this report. And as you can see in the two charts, the number of warehouses and distribution centers has been steadily climbing since 2006. It's important to note that not all of these facilities operate for e-commerce, but it does illustrate how the trends of warehousing and distribution centers in the state are changing. Next slide, please. MAPC's report identifies potential policy responses to e-commerce. One policy response is for municipalities to coordinate with each other, both to understand e-commerce's cumulative impacts and to develop a region-wide strategy. The report outlines actionable steps for municipalities to consider should an e-commerce warehouse or distribution facility be proposed. And also the report identifies areas for future and further research. One area this report identifies is to look at changes in retail and other key employment sectors by income and demographics. This research will enable a better understanding of e-commerce and equity impacts of the shift from in-person to online retail. We also anticipate this research could uncover the extent to which the growing number of e-commerce jobs, particularly delivery positions, are filled by independent contractors. Next slide. And moving forward, MAPC intends to serve as a resource for continued information sharing, research, and findings in the e-commerce industry. I've included a link to our report, and also in the report is an e-commerce web email. So please indicate your interest if you want to be informed of future undertakings and updates. And with that, that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison. And looking forward to learning more from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council about the growth of e-commerce and Amazon in particular. And, I think one of the objectives of tonight's forum is as we begin to better understand the industry and better understand Amazon's plan, we can begin to think more strategically about, what do communities need to do to prepare for an Amazon facility, and what should they be looking for from Amazon when it seeks to locate in their city or town. And that's a great segue to our next speaker, Greg Leroy, which will be giving us more of a national overview of Amazon, and particularly one of the it's Amazon's modus operandi, like so many companies, is to try to extract concessions from communities. We want to talk about concessions from Amazon, not making concessions to them. And Greg has done phenomenal work, not only looking at Amazon, but looking at the whole corporate subsidies across the board. Greg, welcome.
Thanks very much, Rand. It's great to be with everybody. And next slide, please. So I work at Good Jobs First. And next slide, please. We're the group that focuses on corporate welfare. Any kind of tax or fee that companies normally pay to support public services are abated, sometimes for 10 or 20 or even 40 years in the name of economic development. Incentives, so-called incentives or subsidies like these. Amazon's no piker. Next slide, please. So as an embellishment to Allison's maps, every red dot on this map is an Amazon warehouse operating as of about a year and 2 months ago. And obviously there's a lot more now because they raced to build more facilities during the pandemic. And in the color scheme here, land area that is yellow is the most affluent, and the next most affluent is teal. So you can notice that almost all the red dots are either in the affluent areas or right next to them, or in the teal areas, which is to say, no surprise, the warehouses, if they're going to deliver 2 days, 1 day, same day, have to be close to the greatest number of prime subscriber households. Next slide. And the other site location 101 is that they got to be close to interstates so that they get around quickly. So the message here is Amazon's building out. Amazon is half of e-commerce, by the way. Half of all the impacts that Allison laid out are Amazon itself. And half of the impacts and all the site location 101 systems apply to Amazon's location dynamics. Next slide, please. The other tax dodging thing we should all remember, because it's figured prominently in Massachusetts, is that in the early years, Amazon had very few warehouses and they located them only in a few states so that they could legally avoid being forced to collect sales tax. And they used that as an advantage, a price advantage, to gain their market share. But over time, as their business plan morphed, and when they introduced the Prime business model and they promised 2 day, 1 day, same day delivery, they had to start building gobs of warehouses. Next slide. And that really started kicking in 2012. And you'll notice this is a bar chart detailing the number of economic development subsidy awards given the company every year. You'll notice that they were getting 2 or 3 a year before things changed in 2012, and they went on a binge, and they've been averaging more than 20 incentive awards a year since 2012, when they opened up a tax break department in their public policy department, and hired a professional tax subsidy getter, and been on a binge ever since. Next slide. And by 2013, when the company started collecting sales tax in Massachusetts as well as other states, they started caving, right, on this issue of so-called nexus, or the being physically located in a state and therefore being the state being able to legally force them to collect sales tax even before the Wayfair decision against Massachusetts-based Wayfair that wouldn't come for several years later. So by then, half the population was covered in states where they're now beginning to build warehouses. But there was this tension because in some states they had played chicken about not collecting sales taxes and still having a physical presence in the states like Texas and South Carolina. But they finally caved and started collecting, but not even on third-party sales, which is about half of Amazon's sales until the Wayfair decision. Next slide, please. So we track subsidies nationwide, and so far the company has gotten more than $4 billion in economic development subsidies nationwide. And there are many facilities we do not know. Many of their data centers, don't forget Amazon Web Services is the biggest cloud computing company in the world. Many of the data centers getting utility tax exemptions. We don't know the value of those. They are hidden, they are not disclosed. Some of these subsidies given to other warehouses and white collar centers are hidden or only partially disclosed. So that's a conservative number. We know the true number is substantially bigger. Next slide. And of course, Massachusetts already, even before those 10 new facilities that Allison mentioned are in the tubes, I hope they're not subsidized, but we know already that 4 deals worth more than $75 million have been granted to the company in your state. So our message is simple if you go to the next slide, and that is, we should not be paying Amazon to come, as Rand put out. Amazon should not be getting concessions from us. We should be getting concessions from Amazon, because the other harm to remember is the one Allison told you about, and that is that the number of bricks and mortar stores being closed has set records every year in recent years. Malls are dying, big box power centers are dying, strip malls are dying. We have a glut of retail space and a lot of abandoned or underutilized retail space that needs to be refigured, but is also declining in tax base value and declining in assessed value and hurting our property tax base and therefore our local community budgets. Final slide. So look, to our politicians, we say, turn the tables. Amazon is coming because there are prime households here. You're not luring them. You're not causing something to happen that's what might not happen otherwise. They're not going to locate in Rhode Island or New Hampshire. They're going to locate in Massachusetts because you got a lot of buying power there. You're a wealthy state. So let's have community workforce agreements for both the construction phase and the permanent workforce. That means hiring locally, hiring union, going through employment and training programs to advantage disadvantaged workers for the permanent jobs as well as the construction phase jobs. Let's pay people better. Quit comparing workers' wages to retail, which is a fake equivalency. Let's talk about market-based warehouse wages and benefits, which are still substantially higher than what Amazon is paying. Let's get rid of the emissions by an all-electric delivery fleet. Amazon already has a major equity stake in a company called Rivian, which is an electric truck company that's getting ready to ramp up and build electric trucks in downstate Illinois, central Illinois. Let's give procurement preferences to minority and women-owned business enterprises for both the procurement of the construction of the facilities and the ongoing business services. Let's talk about an impact fee for the downward pressure and harm that e-commerce is doing to our retail property tax base, and also a fee to help communities adapt and reuse those damaged retail properties that are being abandoned because of the rise of e-commerce. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Greg, thank you. That's an amazing list of goals and objectives that we should be obtaining from Amazon. They can certainly afford it. The challenge is to build the power here at the community level and at the state level, and obviously nationally, to be able to extract those concessions from Amazon. And you've laid out the agenda, but in order to build that kind of grassroots power, we need to organize ourselves. We need to bring labor and community together to work together to get those workforce agreements, to get union jobs, to get neutrality and better wages and working conditions for the drivers and for the warehouse workers. So, speaking of building that power, we're falling a little bit behind schedule, but I want to introduce Hal from the National Our Revolution organization, who is an organizer helping us to build the very power that we were talking about. Hal?
All right, Rand, thank you so much. Really great to be here and to talk on this incredibly important forum. Amazon is not just a threat to the standard of living of working people. It is not just a threat to small business owners. It is indeed a threat to our democracy. And we must stand together. We must stand with working people. We must stand with consumers. Excuse me for that. We must stand together to defeat this behemoth, because otherwise it will swallow our democracy. And we have seen this before. 130 years ago, when we were living in the Gilded Age, enormous trusts totally subverted our democracy. And it did take the trust buster Teddy Roosevelt and later his cousin to bring power back to the people. We have slid in the past 90 years since the New Deal, and we've got to We've got to fight back to take our country back. At Our Revolution, we're absolutely doing that. If you can, if you get a chance, we'd love you to become a movement builder, help us continue the fight. I put the link in the chat, ourrev.us/MA for Massachusetts. That makes certain that you get the credit, that the state will actually see that money come right back in the form of organizing and working with great people like Rand and Henry and Martha to build power for everyday people, for working people, for consumers, rather than for the corporate elites. Next slide there, Henry. So yes, we have to end that filibuster, because with the filibuster in place, there's simply no way to pass the kind of legislation we need to rein in these rogue corporations. We do ask you, if you possibly can, to click on the link that I believe is going to be put in the chat now, ourrev.us/filibuster, and get involved in our fight to end the filibuster. We are organizing in Arizona, putting pressure on Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly. The two senators there are not on board ending the filibuster. We're also pressuring Senator Manchin in West Virginia. And we've had success. The Arizona State Democratic Party has now said that it supports ending the filibuster, putting pressure on those senators from the Grand Canyon State. If you can go to the next slide, Henry. So we are rallying for the PRO Act, and this is in response in part to Amazon's union busting techniques in Alabama. We had a great rally in Alexandria on May Day, a May Day rally, over 150 people standing right across the street from Senator Mark Warner. He is one of the Virginia senators who is not on board the PRO Act. He's one of the few who has not said they will sign the PRO Act. Even Senator Manchin has stated he will sign the PRO Act, which makes it much easier. It's still probably not quite sufficient. Rand knows more than I do, but it gets us very far down the road and will lead to more organizing and more protection for workers, including those who work in fast food and in warehouses like Amazon's. That's our call tomorrow. Actually, let me just say, we've got the ourrev.us/PRO Act rally tomorrow. The Representative Jim McGovern on our call from Massachusetts. We're going to be talking about an activist named Stephen Donziger. He took on Chevron, and he's paying a very, very harsh and unfair price. Join us tomorrow if you can for our upcoming call on May 24th. One more slide, and then we'll be done. And I just billboarded it. So yeah, there's our rally on May Day. There's my friend Jake. He is a former Amazon worker in the warehouse in Baltimore, standing in front of that great union sign. And we're going to be rallying again on Saturday, June the 12th, in Crystal City, directly across from Amazon headquarters, in support of the PRO Act. And that's going to do it for my segment. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Hal. And thanks to Our Revolution for putting together tonight's forum. And the discussion of the PRO Act and workers' standards is a perfect lead-in to our next speaker, a good friend of mine, a native Somervillian, and my former delivery driver, James Donovan. Jimmy?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yep. Full disclosure, I was Rand's UPS driver for a number of years. I'm a 31-year Teamster. I'm the political and training director now, but I worked at UPS for a very long time. So the work that Amazon drivers and warehousemen do is something I'm very, very familiar with. So Rand had reached out to be part of this program here. At Teamsters Local 25, we've under President O'Brien's leadership, we are looking at this more from a local level. We knew that Amazon was the organizing drive was going on in Alabama, but at the same time, with gentrification in the city of Boston, Amazon was looking to move in, and he got a call from the Alston Brighton City Councilor Liz Braden, asking for some help because the post office was looking to move out of that area. And at the same time, the conversation came down to about Amazon, what it's all about, and all that, and more or less picked Sean's brain about the logistics of what's involved with the company that comes in there, because a lot of the work goes on at night, and when how the packages get to your front porch there's a lot of logistics that go into that. Through that conversation, Sean, it's spoken to her as well as a bunch of the other Boston City councilors. That we came up with a non-binding resolution that would kind of bring Amazon to the table in the city of Boston. What that would look like. With neighborhood groups and labor being a very big part of it. Chris Brennan's going to talk about the building trades and how they've approached it, and we've been working hand in hand. But for us, it's a community standards that during the pandemic, like people were getting all of their packages delivered, being able to work from home and so forth. But the person from UPS, the drivers and the warehousemen that work there make top wages. We essentially, the UPS and the DHL contract what the community wage should be. If you work part-time at UPS, I've never paid for health insurance. I don't know what it's like. Okay, they use that term Cadillac health insurance. That's the Teamsters multi-employer health insurance plan. Our drivers make close to $40 an hour, and both part-time and full-time people have secure retirement with pension, which is kind of something that's a foreign concept to Amazon and many other industries, unfortunately. So the resolution passed in December unanimously. And the cool thing about the way the resolution came down, it was similar to one that was passed in the mid-2000s in regards to Walmart in the city of Boston. As far as I know, there's no Walmarts that are in the city of Boston. So we don't want to stop them from coming. We want them to meet our needs, the neighborhood needs and so forth. So taking that success in Boston, the logical place to roll it out was in Somerville. So Somerville was the second community to roll this out. I'll share the resolution with Rand, and he can send it out to the group afterwards. But the amount of support that we got, and in Somerville, we have a UPS location. That's where I had worked. So it was unanimous there. We brought it to Cambridge, and starting to realize how Amazon's kind of moving into these urban areas. We started looking at communities that have a lot of drivers for UPS that either live in or work in. So with that, we've rolled it out to 11 communities and just started working outside of 128 out in St. Lawrence. Along the way, we've learned a lot, but it's also given a sounding board for the politicians that are in these communities, because they get calls with, the term porch pirate, when someone comes up and steals packages, or the people going down the one-way street, or who are the people that are delivering at home when kids are in school, in their living room, answering the door and so forth. So we've built on this campaign since then. But the interesting thing is, and this is related to Greg and Allison's work, is that as we started to reach out to one community that has this proposed facility, and Chris is going to talk about it, in Andover, we got shut out. They'd already negotiated their crappy deal, not realizing that this is a little more than just finding a tenant, and once we kind of explained to some of the politicians up that way, it's like, oh, the deal's already done. There's nothing we can do. But we brought our resolution to the city of Lawrence. And the interesting thing with there is the mayor welcomed us with open arms, because he realizes that the folks that are going to work in that North Andover facility aren't residents of North Andover. They're going to come from Lawrence, Methuen, and Haverhill. And the interesting debate within Lawrence is that people are excited about them coming to the area because it's jobs, but not realizing that there's a community standard that's set by the UPS contract. So, we've got a bunch of resolutions at other cities and towns coming up. The unique nature of the business within Massachusetts, the local government in Massachusetts we're learning about the town meetings and things like that. But we are definitely making an impact with that. And if Amazon wants to work in these cities and towns, they're going to need to meet with the neighbors and meet with labor, meet with Chris's folks with the building trades, and make it responsible, because it's not necessarily going away, but they could do so much more with it. But this approach from the local end is starting to have ripple effects within the Teamsters out on the West Coast, because Amazon's in the position of now getting, buying airports, not just airplanes, looking at airports as well as port terminals for all their cheap goods coming from overseas. So this is a very small part of a bigger campaign, but it's definitely got the attention of local communities. And I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I'm going to yield my time to Chris to talk about our rally and how we work together up in North Andover and other things that we're working on going forward. So thank you.
Hey, Jimmy, thank you so much. I think you've created a good lead-in for Chris Brennan. I was at that rally in North Andover, and it was amazing to see the turnout that we had from the community and from the labor movement. And Chris has been doing a phenomenal job of putting Amazon's feet to the fire for a community standard at the North Andover facility. I'll just say that facility, the proposed facility, or what they're currently building, is the former Western Electric manufacturing plant that was part of the AT&T system, and used to be 10,000 union members going to work there on 3 shifts, who were members of the Communications Workers of America. And I was assigned to that facility back in the 1980s. And so I have a strong resolve to make sure that it's going to be union again. Chris?
Hi, Rand. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
First of all, I want to thank our Revolution for helping me, allowing me to come in here and talk about what we're trying to do. Much like Jimmy, we're very much on the ground. I represent the North Shore and Merrimack Valley building trades. Many of my colleagues cover the whole state. I do not. And this, as has been referenced, when I say this, I mean North Andover, the North Andover facility, is really the motherlode of this particular, of Amazon's movement into Massachusetts. It's, I know Jimmy got credit for it, but it's closer to 4 million square feet, 3.7, so 3.7 million square feet of warehouse space that's going to be going in to North Andover, which, coincidentally abuts Lawrence Airport. And we had talked about transportation. It literally abuts Lawrence Airport. So, you guys are spot on when you say, air travel is going to be affected. City of Lawrence is going to be impacted by this tremendously, probably much more than the town of Andover, in my opinion. But anyway, so the way they do it, the way they handle construction here is they have fly-by-night teams from Amazon. They come in, they meet with a town. They've already mapped out a developer, a piece of land. They've already talked to them. They pay this developer or the landowner to develop the land, hire the GC, handle everything. And then once the facility is up and constructed, they make the purchase. So they're really 2, sometimes 3 entities separated, even though all their money is behind it. That's what's going on in North Andover. And as I said, I cover the north side of the city, Salem, Revere, and Rand referenced a union facility. It was also that particular facility was also more recently Lucent Technologies. And on top of the thousands of warehouse jobs that were there, all of the construction on our end was done union. Many contractors literally had offices in there where they would perform the maintenance out of it. And it's important to note that NECO, the former NECO plant in Revere, another great union facility, union operated facility, just recently became an Amazon warehouse. So, you're really going from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other when it comes to the equity for those working in there and the community around. We want to make sure Amazon's presence has benefits. Here. Starts with good jobs. These jobs. Jimmy and his team talked about the inside of the facility, and I heard some reference to independent contractors. And my industry runs rampant. And many of these subcontractors that are being hired on these projects are hiring, quote unquote, independent contractors that are going to be working on some of these facilities. The Amazon, the North Andover facility, because of its sheer size, is going to have some union contractors on that project. There are some, just because of the sheer size of it. It's some companies and some industries. It's nearly impossible to not be union to do a project of this size. So that's a good thing for us. But I can tell you right now, it's already happened that where they don't have to use union, they are not. There's a couple of subcontractors that have been awarded the projects over there already that are notoriously bad actors, from cash payments to misclassification, i.e. Subcontractors, and so on. So, what's the benefit to anyone? There's no health care. Who picks up the tab? We do. Again, I know I'm somewhat preaching to the choir here, but unnecessary costs to local government for health care, for food stamps, for child care, all on the backs of the working people, and not not at the feet of Amazon, which is where it should be. They have a project in Littleton. They have a project in, like I said, in Salem. They have a project in Northborough. They have a project in Milford. They have, I could go on and on. Haverhill. Haverhill, we just had an action out there as well. We're going to be performing an action at the job site. We've been there for a number of months since the rally ran. It's really what we have to do at this point. We can't. You just can't get a hold of anyone from Amazon. As I said, there's two or three entities removed. It's funny. There are it's strange bedfellows. I'll say the owner of the property in North Andover is related to the Perot family out of Texas. Our old friend Ross Perot, and same goes for in Hudson, New Hampshire. They're going to be building another facility up there. Same owner, Hillwood. So, the building trades, we're working hard to try to get these jobs for our folks. We're happy and proud to be part of this, your organization. And, we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep fighting the good fight, pointing out what's going on there. I would really ask you guys, anyone who's interested, to go on to AmazonUpdates.org. We have created that website with our friends, 617 Media, to keep the folks up to date. You can sign up and get news feed from there. They can tell you anything and everything that's new in the construction industry. I can tell you right now, there was several injuries on some jobs around the state recently. I know at the Andover site, you had a gentleman, a non-licensed driver, actually drive a forklift into a pit. I have photos of that. That a union forklift driver had to come over and pull it out. And also, unfortunately, last weekend on Saturday, you had a roofer fall off the roof at the job in Kingston. So, their safety measures, much like inside their facilities, are suspect at best. And I think it's important that we all kind of stick together here and move forward with what we're trying to do. But, we're up against it here, folks. And I know we all know this, but we're on the right side of this. Unfortunately, the laws are such that I have so many loopholes that they're just able to, once we close one, they get another one. Once we close one, they get another one. It's independent contractors. It's frustrating, but we're going to keep at it, and that's all I got, man.
Chris, thank you so much, and thanks for leading the struggle in North Andover and the Merrimack Valley and across Massachusetts to make sure that when Amazon builds a new facility, that they adhere to good community standards. That's it in a nutshell. So we've heard from a Teamster organizer, from a building trades organizer, and with that, I want to give a voice now to an Amazon worker. Jonathan Bailey has been an outspoken organizer at Amazon, an employee. He's currently a candidate for office, and we're really thrilled to have you here with us tonight. Jonathan?
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's super good to be here. Let's see. Well, I'm just super excited to be here with all of you and talk a little bit about how the fight looks like, both inside Amazon warehouses and different things that we can do in order to connect our communities in ways that really support that fight. I'm gonna first dig just a little bit into what we've done so far. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat and I'll try to answer whatever I can. So I've been an employee at an Amazon, the first Amazon warehouse here in Queens, New York, for almost, coming up on 2 years. For us, one of the first things that we noticed was that Amazon was getting away with stealing our safe and sick leave under New York City law. Under New York City law, we're entitled to a certain amount of sick leave time, and Amazon, figured that they were going to just kind of get away with denying us that. Our first wins happened really fast because of that. Basically, we started a petition, I'm sure, many workers have, and on it right away, they sent out, folks that were closer to management, of course, in a very regular way, to see what's on the petition and kind of spy everything out. And really just us starting to push back, we won our sick leave right away. But as the pandemic settled in, we really had an expansion of our demands, because we wanted to make sure that we were safe in our workplace. My warehouse actually was the first one that was identified as having a case of the virus. And I'm sure that there were earlier cases of the virus in Amazon warehouses, but we're the only ones that were organized enough to be able to take notice and take action quickly. So for us, during that time, we still were of the understanding that the virus could stay on plastic for 24 hours, on paper up to 72. And so, for us, we were worried about not just it spreading around in the warehouse, but also, possibly spreading it out into our communities. But we were able to come together and shut down the warehouse definitively with a spontaneous strike that had almost 100% buy-in. And actually kind of after that, and with other actions, slowdowns, walkouts, we're also able to, win some of these bigger demands. So Amazonians United, is a network of Amazon workers and worker organizations. And one of the first demands that came out of Amazonians United was paid time off. Eventually, we all got on board together for that as a demand, and kind of in conjunction with actions all across the U.S., with Sacramento and Chicago particularly being showing leadership, we were able to win paid time off, which it equates to tens of millions of dollars of value. Not just for workers here in New York, but for workers across the U.S. And so that's actually so far that's the only large nationwide demand in the U.S. that has been won by Amazon workers or in an organization of workers in Amazon. Okay, please to describe the work of Amazonians United. Yeah, okay. You know, but of course, you know, that picture actually of me is of a picture that was taken for an article that dug into like some of the backlash. So, you know, and you've heard a little bit about kind of the overlap of the overlap of Amazon and the government here. And in no place is that more obvious, I think, than on the shop floor of Amazon warehouses. So like Amazon actually, like, you know, they have a concerted effort to hire ex-police officers, ex-FBI agents, ex-military. You know, Amazon recently hired an ex-NSA chief, the NSA chief that oversaw Edward Snowden. Amazon has gone all in on trying to adopt various aspects of the U.S. Police state into its operations. And in doing so, it actually kind of really taps into this like long legacy of American labor relations, right? You know, for any of us with like that history, you know, like for any Black Americans with like a long history here in the U.S., you know, we know that like our ancestors also like worked in you know, workplaces that you know, heavily relied on this relationship between the state in order to ensure that there's like a militant driving of Black labor. And it's really obvious that that aspect of those labor relations is totally alive and well in the Amazon warehouse, where my ancestors, you know, worked on a plantation. I like work in a warehouse, and like understanding that context is super important because of the way that it shows the way that our organizing has to be both focused on like the economic drivers in the workplace, but also like it must be connected to the greater fight for liberation of colonized peoples. As long as Amazon continues to adopt more facets of the state and takes on more powers that we used to think were only reserved for liberal democracies, it becomes more and more important for us to unify our labor organizing with our efforts, you know, like in demands that are broader, that are on government itself. So in recognizing this like connection, you know, we've held events, not just like, you know, actions in the shop floor, but also events that like kind of echo the sentiment, that kind of celebrate this like history of struggle. For us, you know, we've conducted a vigil on the last Juneteenth to kind of like emphasize and focus in on that. And you know, our organizing is really tapped into like seeing how can we use Amazon warehouses. I'm sorry, I'm like getting mad texts. How can we use our organizing to ensure that we are building a pipeline so that you know, some of the most exploited workers go from being completely like lacking any kind of organization, lacking any kind of like orientation towards class struggle, lacking a sense of what solidarity feels like, and taking them to the point where they are like capable of understanding the work environment, of creating strategy, and also executing that strategy. And so, you know, it's really exciting to see spaces like Chicago really start to like show like fantastic like signs of that, where you know, like there's just so many instances of people like taking that type of you know, like political agency really to decide, okay, it's time to take on this fight. This is how we're going to do it, and execute on it. And I think the real ambition, I think, is to because Amazon warehouses are a space in which workers are there generally for a very short time. You know, the average turnaround, I think, is around like 6 months. for folks who like stay past the first 2 weeks. And so, you know, it actually gives us this huge opportunity, right? Because if workers are coming in and cycling out, if they can within that time experience what it means to go from like no orientation or recognition for solidarity in working class power to like being able to embrace it and live through it, then we will have created, you know, a working class struggle engine that will help help people quickly go through the process of going from no affiliation to being like deeply engaged. And that's the way that we can rebuild, like really refound a working class movement here in the United States. So for me, I think that that's like super exciting, and I'm super happy to be working with so many fantastic people that really care about building working class power here in the U.S. So thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, Jonathan, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. There are, you know, a lot of attention was brought to Amazon because of the union election in Bessemer. And, you know, this really got people to focus across the country and around the world on wages and working conditions and for workers there. Maybe you could just share for a minute, you know, what's it like to work at an Amazon facility?
So like, you know, I mean, you know, there's not just one experience for Amazon workers. You know, I've never had to pee in a bottle myself. But you know, I've had coworkers who've gotten bags back from drivers who took a dump in one of the bags. So like, it's there are like circumstances where it is as bad as you've heard, and like for sure you can, especially if you have any kind of awareness for like building working class power, you can see and you can feel the way that Amazon tries to exert influence over you to prevent you from fighting, from trying to improve your conditions. You know, it's the same challenge that I think workers have always been under. You know, every step forward is one that is made by working together with your coworkers and fighting in solidarity.
Wow, thank you so much, Jonathan. You know, I think listening to Jimmy Donovan talk about wages and working conditions for the UPS warehouse workers and drivers, and contrasting that with the not yet union experience of Amazon warehouse workers and drivers, we really have a benchmark that we can use to begin to say to Amazon and to workers at the company, it's time to rise up and to achieve the same level of respect and safety and compensation and benefits that people at the Postal Service or at UPS have achieved. And you know, if we're not able to elevate the conditions for Amazon workers, it's going to drag the conditions for those that are already unionized. It's going to drag their conditions and down. So I think we have a community of interest here that is really something to build on, both here in Massachusetts and across the country and around the world. We've run out of time. In fact, we're a little bit over time, so we're going to have to wrap up. There's been some excellent postings in the chat and some fascinating questions posed in the Q&A section, some really enlightened ideas. I believe that if you're interested in saving the chat, you can do that by just clicking on the ellipses at the bottom where it says save the chat, and you'll have all those links that you can refer to in the future. But I want to make sure that everybody knows about an action tomorrow. Eyes on Amazon stakeholders. It's tomorrow at noon at the offices of State Street at 100 Summer Street. And we will be meeting there to deliver a message to State Street about how, as a major stakeholder and stockholder in Amazon, how they should cast their votes in Amazon's meeting on May 26th, on Wednesday, May 26th, when they have their annual meeting. After we gather at State Street, we're going to march to Fidelity, another one of the top 5 stakeholders or shareholders in Amazon. So if you have time and inclination, please join us tomorrow at 100 Summer Street with Jobs with Justice and with other groups that will be standing in solidarity and demanding corporate responsibility from Amazon. And finally, on June 15th, maybe we can post this in the chat, we're going to have a forum with the author of Fulfillment, Winning and Losing in One-Click America, authored by Alec McGinnis. It's a phenomenally insightful book, and I would urge people to join us for that forum at 8 o'clock on June 15th, Eastern Time. And I think there's a link to that. With that, I'll just say it's really been fun putting this together. I'm excited about how labor and our revolution and other civic and community groups can work together to begin to put the kind of movement that would turn Amazon into a responsible neighbor and a good employer. It's a challenging job. It seems overwhelming, but if we're not able to do that, the implications for the future are profound, because this company is got its tentacles into everything. And we have an obligation, I think, as organizers and as leaders in our community, to begin to formulate the kinds of demands that Allison and Greg laid out, and to seek the community standards that Jimmy and Chris were talking about for the building trades and for the warehouse workers. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank Our Revolution and the organizing committee, Martha, Chris, Robin, and Henry. It's been really a pleasure to put this together. Oh, there it is, all on the slide. And if you want to be a part of the movement and you want to build the kind of power that it's going to take, please join Our Revolution Massachusetts. And I think there's a link right there to do that as well. And with that, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a safe evening, and back to work tomorrow. Martha, did you want to conclude with something?
Really only to offer our profound thanks to you and the panelists for making it so clear what we're facing as Amazon continues to expand within the state. I want to add my voice to yours. People should join us, join ORMA. If you're a ward committee member, join ORMA. If you're unaffiliated, join ORMA. If you belong to other progressive organizations, work with us, join us. We work to put on forums like this one. We have one coming up the end of June, Reimagining Progressive Pride. It's critical that we work together in unity to take on corporations that have way too much economic and political power.
Martha, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. Folks said that they're not able to save the chat, but we will save a copy of the chat and send that out to everybody that registered for this forum tonight. I'm sure that we have everybody's email, and we'll share all of those links and so much more with folks. This is the beginning of a conversation, certainly not the end of it. And with that, Hope to see people tomorrow and on June 15th. Thanks a lot.